Changing the transmission fluid. It should be easy, but not if you're someone like me who always runs into obstacles when trying to do something that should be easy. So here's my old transmission pan, and I went to change the fluid last week when I realized that the bolt was stripped. Now this is something you have to watch out for when you take your car to the mechanic, because many times the mechanic won't look up the proper torque spec. And so if you try to work on the car down the line, you're going to have problems either getting the bolts out or putting them back in. The only way I could get this drain plug out was by using the screwdriver to pry down on it while simultaneously using a ratchet to loosen it. And so once I got this plug out, I replaced it with a new plug and a new washer, and I filled the pan with oil, and then I saw that it was leaking from around here. So I drained out the oil again, and I took off the plug, and then I realized that I had scratched the surface right underneath where the plug is supposed to seal, and so that's why it was leaking out. And I didn't know how to go about fixing that cut that I had made in the metal, because it's pretty deep. It was not something you could just easily file. So I ended up just getting a whole new pan. When I put the new pan on, I stripped 2 of the bolt holes on the engine block, even when I used the correct torque spec. When you're doing something like the oil pan or the transmission pan or the valve cover gasket, you want to take it easy on the torque spec because they don't need to be that tight. If your Cherokee is really old, sometimes the bolt holes and the threads inside can get kind of worn down, so if you over tighten them, they're prone to stripping. So you just have to be careful with that. Another thing you want to take into consideration is the dry versus the wet torque spec. Now I was reading that if it doesn't say dry or wet, you should assume that the bolt is going in dry. So you should take compressed air or brake cleaner or something and clean out the bolt hole, as well as clean the bolt off, and then insert it and torque it down. So the moral of the story is, when working on an old car like this, if you take it to the mechanic, make sure that they don't over tighten or strip your bolts. And if you're working on it yourself, make sure you don't do the same thing. If you're trying to take off this pan yourself and the pan has been on there since the factory and you're not a very experienced mechanic, you might just want to take it into a shop or have someone who is experienced help you, because the RTV that they used on this pan from the factory was very, very hard to get off. It was hard to disconnect the pan from the engine block. And also the dipstick tube would not come off. And if you read on the forums, you'll find that a lot of people run into this same problem. So that's my advice for today. If you found this helpful, go ahead and subscribe. I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.